Bertram, free will is one of those deep, probative questions that tells us a lot about what reality is. And I'm speaking as someone who was a brain scientist, I've studied philosophy, but you as a social psychologist, a cognitive psychologist, why do you think free will is a big question?
Well, the first reason why free will is a big question is because humans struggle with understanding it. They grow up 1.5, 2 years old, recognizing that they can change something in the world. They recognize their own agency. They reflect 4, 5, 6 years old. They reflect on their own actions. And then they take a philosophy class and begin to think that they are now discovering a deep facet of reality, that free will is something special, something that only humans have, that changes the world like nothing else can. And it's a question that shows how much humans reflect on themselves, on their own powers, on their own limits. And then we try to understand. We cannot stop to understand. And as a social psychologist, I'm interested in the very fact that people try to understand action, what underlies it, what explains it. And humans have this need to explain, understand where something comes from. They have to find meaning. And to postulate something like free will helps you understand why certain actions are unique, why certain things are unpredictable, why certain things are new, because somebody freely, creatively did something that you didn't expect would happen before.
Now, most philosophers think that they understand free will. Now, each has their own approach and their own very specific definition. And even though everyone is confident that they understand it, and perhaps other people don't, there's great disagreement. So the kind of research that you do, can that help us with that problem?
I'm not sure whether it can help us with the disagreement the philosophers have, because I think that the disagreement among philosophers is in part because they have deviated far from an ordinary concept of free will. And once you deviate from an ordinary concept, all bets are off. You can change it this way, you can change it that way, and then you argue over many books and a lifetime. So the question is, what is the concept originally for ordinary people? How does the child learn anything like free or will or agent or desire, action, intentional action? All these concepts really are ordinary concepts. Humans cannot help but have those. What the philosopher does is take those starting points and then push harder, push at them, try to see their limits. But what philosophers often do and shouldn't do is freely change parts of that concept. And in my work, what I'm trying to do is first find out, well, how do people really conceptualize free will? Which also sometimes just means, how do they conceptualize an intentional action that was freely performed? Because for ordinary people, there isn't much of a difference. There are so many quotes you can find of neuroscientists and philosophers talking about ordinary meaning of free will as entwined with the soul and dualism and metaphysical and indeterminism and uncaused cause, and we find none such thing. Ordinary people, when asked what free will means, tell you that it's a choice that you make with either without constraints or with the power to overcome constraints. You think about your choice before you do it, and it's in line with your desires, with your reasons. It's a fairly straightforward concept. So philosophers have to recognize that when you use the word free will, that they're bound to a community of speakers, and then, taking as a starting point, they can justify and argue to expand that concept and to change it, and maybe to challenge the concept and talk about how people using that concept speak incorrectly about reality. Then that becomes a discussion point we can take on.
But you start with the benchmark, which is what ordinary people think about free will.
Right.
So what do they think about free will?
Well, ordinary people think that free will is something that we are capable of. It's a capacity. We don't always act freely. Our parents tell us to do things, our teachers tell us to do things, our interviewers tell us to answer certain questions, but we still act intentionally. We can decide to do this or to do that. So for ordinary people, the fundamental idea that there's a choice, there are options, you can go this way, you can that way, and then you decide, you take one path. That's one of the core elements of free will. But the other part...
It's up to you to take a path.
It is. And if I force you either physically or because I control your brain, then clearly it is not up to you, it's not your choice. But choosing one thing or another is based on some form of thinking. It doesn't have to be detailed reasoning. It doesn't have to be long deliberation. But for people, choice is not just an automatic, quick action of the mind, if you will, but it is the end point of a process that can be a few seconds, sometimes a few minutes, sometimes hours, of considering the options, weighing the possibilities, imagining, simulating the future. Something that humans are incredibly good at, to simulate the different paths that they could take and then choosing one of them. And that choice is only possible because nobody else and nothing outside and also inside constrains them so much that they are paralyzed. Your brain can constrain you. Drugs can constrain you. Other people can constrain you, and physics often constrains you. So people are very keenly aware of the limits that they face when they try to make choices. But choice is the fundamental concept that underlies free will, and very rarely do people actually use the term free will. They say, he acted freely, and she made a choice, and she freely chose that, or she did not. Free will is almost a contradiction because the will is not really free. The action is free because it's based on the will. That would be a summary of the ordinary concept.
How coherent is the ordinary concept? Do you have a wide variety that you're giving me the average of, or is it pretty tight that most people conform to the same view?
It's a fascinating question to figure out what the concept of a community is. Philosophers like Putnam and others have talked about this idea of cognition being shared, concepts being shared, meaning being shared. So to find the complete concept in any one mind is actually difficult. That's what philosophers often do. They probe to find all the elements. What we can do is ask a group of people to define the way they think about a particular term. And then we look at how they converge. Do 40 people give us basically 39 different definitions? Or do the same elements come up over and over again? Maybe you give us 2 out of 3, another person gives us 1 out of 3, and then the third person gives us the first and the third. And we track that. And we've done this now with college students, with community members, so far all in the US, at different levels of education, different levels of religiosity and political attitudes. But we keep finding the same, basically 3 elements. Choice, based on some reasons or desires or goals, and free from constraints either outside or inside. And sometimes the percentage of people who mention choice more often than free from constraints varies, goes up or down.
You mentioned 3. Choice.
Choice, in line with your desires or goals, and free from external or internal constraints. And when we ask people, so this is what you mean by free will. Well, what do you mean by free choice? Or what do you mean by free action? They begin to struggle because these things are really highly overlapping. Free choice, free will, what's the difference? Free will is choice and it's free. And then free action is based on a free choice. So you see that people actually have a coherent network of elements, but they can also get confused, as often philosophy students get, when you start to probe. Well, free action, is that different from free will, different from free choice? How is it different? That's what the concepts are not usually made for. Ordinary people can use concepts to get social work done, cognitive work done, to communicate with each other, and to distinguish between somebody did something intentionally, really out of his own free will, and therefore he deserves more blame. And somebody else was forced to, was threatened to. Yes, it was intentional, but it wasn't freely done. So these are important distinctions without which our legal system, our moral system would be quite different. But I don't think that it's a metaphysical concept that is needed for the legal or moral system. The concept of intentionality, of choosing versus being made to do, or unintentionally doing, or automatically, mindlessly doing, that distinction lies at the core of these domains.